Hello, I'm Sean. This is my multimodal project. So I did it on gerrymandering. So to start out with, so the target audience is going to be voting. So as we've seen with some issues kind of happening in the last couple of days, voting is huge. So that's one of the main audience targets. Also, voters in key states. So there's some states that in the next upcoming election typically play a bigger factor in the results than what other states do based on population, the electoral college, things like that. General awareness for just future voters. So, there's going to be people who, aren't old enough to vote or maybe don't want to vote, but for them, it's really key for them to know what's going on when it comes to this practice. And I would say just taxpayers in general, just because with a lot of these things, especially with restructuring districts and things like that, tax-paying dollars are probably being used in some sense. So gerrymandering, so what it is, it's basically taking blocks of different precincts and organizing them in a way to basically find a way for a desired result that's in the gray areas of the rules. It affects pretty much everyone. So whether you're Republican or Democrat, any race, it affects everybody. Gerrymandering's purpose is what I was saying before. It's a desired result of voting elections and what you can do to kind of move the blocks around to get there. How we got here is something that I'll kind of go over in the history of gerrymandering, but it's something to where it's gotten out of control in recent years, and there hasn't really been enough legislation put into it to really put a stop to it. In the path forward is going to be some things that I explain in the upcoming slides. The history of gerrymandering. So 1812, it was coined. The Massachusetts race, that's like the photo that I have there. That's kind of something that they drew when they realized what was going on. The first occurrence was in 1788 over Virginia, their redistricting. One of the articles that I cited, not a lot really happened with it for a while. It wasn't really that hot of a hot topic. It coined in there or described in there the 60s and the 80s. There really wasn't much going on. It ramped up in the 90s, and then the 2000s really gained a lot of steam, I should say, due to voting habits, and the last decade or so, it's really got out of control. Statistics in gerrymandering. So some of the things to kind of talk about is wasted votes. So basically, if you structure the boxes around, it basically almost eliminates some of the people in some of those boxes. That's kind of like the easiest way to describe it. Gap efficiency is a weird one. So as you can see in that Michigan chart, you can actually have less percentage of votes, but still get more seats based on how it's organized. So that was the 2016 election. That's an interesting one. In magnitude percentage, which I don't really have a chart for it, but that's kind of like the magnitude of like how the boxes are kind of moved around and the percentage of how that affects things. That's kind of like the easiest way to describe that. So racial gerrymandering is basically taking advantage of low-income citizens and minorities. Some of the racial lines determine the changes based on what the party is trying to do. So it shows there, so the 30%, so the minority packing is moving it to like one side. And it kind of shows right there the influence, and then the candidates can be kind of moved around. So basically, they just try to move them into one side and out of the other one so that it doesn't have as much of a difference. So prison gerrymandering is a way for them to kind of skew the numbers around when it comes to where inmates are and whether they can, and also it's factored in whether they can vote or not, depending on the laws. And then the imprisoned and the political power. So that kind of like ties into each other. And another one is like the rules of, where they're putting those votes at and how they're moving them around. And since it is people who are in prison, they don't have the same rights. So the parties in place can take advantage of these, and it's really hard in a court of law to prove that this is going on. Countermandering is a way to pretty much get rid of gerrymandering. So, as it says, the list seats shall be allocated to the top two parties as to produce the closest possible correspondence between the statewide vote share and the overall seat share of each of the top two parties. So this is a way to just try to like make everything even, get rid of that, and then move forward. This is a way that, in one of the articles I cited, is to kind of do gerrymandering but make it fair. And then their theory is you can't really get rid of it. It's something to where how these maps are drawn, they're always going to be subjective. There's no perfect formula. But this is a way to where if you divide them in 55-45 boxes in different sort of formulas, to where it can at least have a balance and an imbalance and a balance and an imbalance, and kind of there'll be a way to interweave them in some way to where it makes sense based on how they're segmented. The 2022 election, so basically the 5 most competitive states, and in the article that I did, it shows the maps and how they've changed over the last couple years. And so just like in every election, Ohio, Illinois, North Carolina, Texas, and Georgia, and how their maps are kind of done, those are going to decide what things are going to look like in the next elections and in these midterms that are going on. The conclusion, really, how we solve this problem, how we get around it, how we are self-aware. The number one reason is just vote. There's really no direct impact that one single person can kind of do. Keeping up with the news and how this is going and how this is progressing, I would say, is a way to kind of help with this. And then, of course, supporting grassroots efforts. So this seems like one of these issues that it's finally gaining a little bit of, I don't know if popularity is the right word, but like people are starting to be aware of it and know what's going on. So hopefully with voting and awareness, this issue will be solved. There's my works cited page. And then also, thanks everybody for your time. It's been a great semester and great working with everybody. So thank you so much and have a great day.